After what could only be described as an elite level troll job by Capcom, they finally gave us a new look at the next mainline Resident Evil game, Resident Evil Requiem. And I have to say the reception so far has been overwhelmingly positive. And why is that? We're finally returning to one of the franchise's most iconic locations and one of my favorites, Raccoon City. But this isn't the same city we've explored before. The bomb has already dropped and it's been nearly 30 years since it has. This is post-destruction Raccoon City. The trailer gave us haunting shots of familiar streets and landmarks, all in ruins, as well as some genuinely disturbing creatures. One thing Capcom made clear is that Resident Evil is sticking to the first-person perspective from Resident Evil 7 and Resident Evil Village. Seeing Raccoon City up so close through the eyes of the protagonist has the potential to make this one of the most terrifying entries in the series. Now that the hype is setting in, it's time to talk about what I want to see in Resident Evil Requiem. Here are 5 things I really hope Capcom gets right. Number 5, less bombastic action, more pure survival horror. One of the reasons Resident Evil 7 was so beloved is because it brought the series back to its survival horror roots. Tight corridors, limited resources, constant dread, and while Resident Evil Village was a blast with its ridiculous over-the-top action set pieces, the entire ending sequence, whatever that was, it was absurd, but it was still fun. I personally lean more towards the slow, creepier style of horror that we saw in 7. Think about the House Beneviento section from Village, which is the one part of the game where enemies didn't feel like the main threat. There were no gunfights, just pure atmosphere, tension, and psychological fear. To me, that's peak Resident Evil. I don't want Requiem to turn into another shooting gallery. I want every corner to feel dangerous like it did in 7. And really like it did when the series began. Every door should creak open like a possible death sentence. Give us limited ammo, terrifying enemies, and that constant anxiety that makes survival horror what it is. That doesn't mean cut out action entirely. I love a good boss fight or boulder punching as much as anyone, but let horror drive the experience and reserve crazy action for small parts of the game. Give us a good mix to get the best of both worlds. Number 4, classic characters returning. Before I talk about these characters, be sure to subscribe as it really helps us out. Anyway, we're back in Raccoon City, arguably the most famous location in the franchise, which means you have to bring the legends back for this one. In the trailer, the main focus was on Grace Ashcroft, the daughter of Alyssa Ashcroft from Resident Evil Outbreak, and I wouldn't be surprised if you don't know who that is because it's not exactly one of the more popular games in the series. But anyway, noticeably absent are Leon Kennedy, Chris Redfield, Claire Redfield, Jill Valentine, and pretty much all the other big characters in the series that we saw in Raccoon City. Leon in particular feels like a given, and some early reports suggest he may even be the main playable character, but so far Capcom's kept quiet. If that's true, it would be huge after all. Leon hasn't starred in a brand new mainline game since Resident Evil 6 all the way back in 2012, and that's going to be around 14 years old when Requiem releases next year. I also just want to put something into perspective. In Resident Evil 2, Leon was just 21 years old. In Requiem set in 2026, he's pushing 50. So we've basically watched this guy's whole life unfold with the franchise, and if he wasn't old before, he certainly is now. Capcom will have Leon saving the president's daughter and carrying gum around and doing whatever this is until he's 90 years old. But what about Claire, Jill, Chris? Even cameo appearances would be nice fan service, but having them as important roles would be even better. Requiem has a real opportunity here to bring all these fan favorites back for one last adventure in Raccoon City. Knowing Capcom, they might even do something ridiculous, like have all of them come through Portal's endgame style, and when it seems like the main characters are gonna lose, Leon will be down and say something like, "We can't defeat this guy, he's as tough as a boulder," and then Chris will show up, and he'll say something like, "Someone say boulder," and then as the main enemy tries to attack and says something like, "I'm gonna crush you into sandwiches," Jill will show up. Number 3, meaningful connections to RE7 and Village's lore. The Resident Evil 7 Village storyline felt strangely disconnected from the rest of the series, at least until the very end of Village, where things suddenly got a whole lot more tied to the main lore. Without spoiling too much, the Megamycete and Mold retcons open the door to link Ethan Winters' story with the broader Umbrella narrative, but there's just still so many loose ends. What happened to Rose Winters before the events of the Village DLC? We saw her as a young adult in the future, but it's left vague what her role is previously outside her just working to hone her powers. What about the BSAA's role? And remember that hint in Village's ending about bioweapons? Requiem could and should tie these threads together. Show us how the Mold, the Megamycete, and the legacy of Umbrella connect to the ruins of Raccoon City. Maybe the Mold was always here under the city, maybe the bomb didn't sterilize everything after all. This is Capcom's chance to unify these storylines together. Number 2, a proper send-off to the RE7 RE9 trilogy. Let's be real, we know this is probably the end of the RE7 Village Requiem storyline, and while Requiem doesn't look like a direct sequel to Village in the way Village was to 7, it clearly shares a lot from perspectives, the same engine, and an overall similar feel. What I want is closure, a real satisfying conclusion to this trilogy and not a vague cliffhanger or unresolved plotline. Resident Evil 7 was a fresh reboot for the series, and it introduced new characters, a new tone, and atmosphere closer to true horror than the franchise had seen in years, and while Village leaned back into the more action-oriented gameplay, it still felt connected to this new world. But after Requiem, honestly I hope Capcom shakes things up again. Give us a totally new setting, new characters, maybe even a new gameplay style. But before that, Requiem needs to tie off the story, at least for now, if they do plan on changing course with Resident Evil 10. At number 1, a destroyed Raccoon City worth exploring. The most exciting thing about Requiem by far is the setting. This is not the shiny, zombie-infested Raccoon City we saw in the past. This is the cratered version that's been left to rot for decades, and Capcom has the chance to make this the creepiest environment in Resident Evil history, which is going to be difficult considering the Baker Mansion exists. Imagine creeping through old police stations, hospitals, underground laboratories. There could be new underground labs that we haven't seen before, strange mutant wildlife adapted to the fallout. Imagine survivors hitting the ruins and even more experimenting on creatures. And as for the enemies, mix in some classic enemies. Maybe the Lickers survived underground, maybe a twisted version of the Tyrant prototype. Environmental storytelling should make the city feel alive, or rather undead, with clues, audio logs, and hidden rooms telling the story of Raccoon City's death after the bomb fell. So those are 5 things I want to see in Resident Evil Requiem, and I'm really hyped for this game since Resident Evil is one of my favorite franchises, even though I don't talk about it much in this channel. And I'm pretty optimistic Capcom will deliver after 2 great games in a row, plus some great remakes. But what do you think? Are you excited for Requiem? What do you want to see? Let me know in the comments, and if you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more. I know we mostly covered Nintendo, but I'd love to do more Resident Evil content if this video does well. Thank you for watching, and this has been Domain with Game Domain.